Welcome to the Daily Treasure Podcast produced by Mark Inc. Ministries. I'm Sharon Betters, and we are wrapping up our final week of our series called Journey to Christmas with the Midwives of the Messiah. Andrea Mayer has been our guest writer this week, and we have been digging deeper into the life of Mary, the mother of Jesus. And so it is kind of with regret that I say this is our last one as we end our time with Mary and also with our guest writer and my friend, Andrea Mayer. Today's treasure is from Matthew chapter 12, verses 46 through 50. While he was still talking to the multitudes, behold, his mother and brothers stood outside, seeking to speak with him. Then one said to him, "Look, your mother and your brothers are standing outside, seeking to speak with you." But he answered and said to the one who told him, "Who is my mother and brothers?" And he stretched out his hand toward his disciples and said, "Here are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother." We saw yesterday how anxious Mary was to see her son begin his reign as a Davidic king. She envisioned him as someone who would sit on an earthly throne. Her vision of the future Messiah in her mind might have looked like Moses teaching people to obey the Torah. She expected the Messiah would establish peace, righteousness, and holiness. We know Mary had limited understanding of what Jesus' actual rule and reign would look like. She certainly never envisioned the cross as part of the plan. Jesus was constantly giving Mary course corrections. In this scene, we see Mary and her other children are attempting an intervention. Mary had become ambivalent. After the first miracle at Cana, Jesus began his formal ministry. It initially may have been exciting to see Jesus heal the sick and feed the poor, but suddenly and quickly things veered off. Nothing looked like the plan she envisioned in her head. Had she heard the angels wrong? Mary was now watching her son hang out with sinners and outcasts. She must have cringed when he argued with the religious leaders, violated Sabbath laws, and practiced table fellowship with heathens. Mary and her other children had had enough. They were going to give him a good talking to, save him from himself. Things were heating up. The town was in an uproar. People were divided. Religious leaders were angry, and Jesus was being disruptive. It was obvious from Jesus' response toward his family, he was creating a new family. He stated it. His family would be those who followed the will of his Father. Those who believed in him and sat at his feet to hear him speak. Jesus' brothers at this point were not believers. Mary was obviously confused by this odd turn of events. These were harsh words for a mother to hear. Have you ever been there? Our family looks nothing like we anticipated. Somewhere, my vision of a perfect family had been derailed. I think I can say with full authority that as a young Christian mother, I set out to define what it meant to have a strong, healthy family. I could tell you what that looked like because I kept a running list in my head and proudly checked each box as I methodically reviewed our performance as parents. God, church, strong marriage, healthy balance of love and discipline, community involvement. All boxes were checked, and therefore all indicators that the rewards for our labor would be waiting. But now the once proud family portrait hanging on the wall of my living room had all kinds of subliminal cracks running through it. It caused my stomach to dip with sadness. My perfect family image had been toppled and destroyed. That freeze-frame moment, happy as it was, would be a constant reminder of a fractured family. I had once cherished that portrait after the death of my oldest son at the age of 28 in a drug overdose because it was our last portrait together as a family. But it became a great source of pain after I was slammed by my youngest son's drunk driving accident and the death of an innocent man. Whenever that picture caught my eye, my mind honed in on our cruel twist of fate. The portrait represented nothing but a reminder of a family shattered. I saw nothing more than the heartache of a son who was no more, and a son whose life would be no more. It seemed that everything around me was a facade, and I questioned God and what was real and reliable. None of this was in my future. How did my life veer this far off? I'm sure Mary felt that way as she stood paralyzed at the foot of the cross. How could this scene complete the picture of angels, shepherds, and magi? Mary stood before the cross. She heard the pounding of the nails and the sounds of piercing pain. She watched her son endure the most brutal death known to man. Nothing made any sense. One thing I want us to remember is that Mary was at the foot of the cross. She could have remained home, buried under the covers. She could have been raising her fist to the heavens, but no. Mary continued to walk forward and face her darkest night with a firm reliance that she would be faithful to her Son and as Lord, even under the humiliation of the cross. And in all of Jesus' agony, he made it a point to speak words to his mother from the cross. How beautiful is that to ponder. In all the horrendous agony, he sees her. It would be a matter of time before Mary would get to experience the fullness of her son's supernatural mission. We must never forget, regardless of what we can see, Jesus sees us. He has our best interest at heart. The cross led to the resurrection. Every bit of it was worth it because Jesus is alive. In my own life, I see clearly now how God had blessed me in ways I could never imagine through the ministry of pain. My trials transformed my heart, and I see the path he placed me on was truly to expose me to his heavenly power and his perfect plan in my life. My trials have become my treasures. Oh, Father, help me to thank you for the ministry of pain. May I never lose sight of what you sacrificed. You paid for my life by bearing the cross. Grant me the grace to accept everything in my life as coming from the hand of a sovereign God and Father. May I not be ashamed of the things that have entered my life, and allow me to use them to encourage others and to point people to you, O Lord. For you have remained faithful even when I was faithless. I know that the ministry of thorns goes a lot further than the ministry of thrones. Thank you for carrying me through every step of the way. Friends, thanks so much for joining us for the Daily Treasure podcast. And as always, we like to introduce you to other resources that are designed to help turn your heart toward Jesus. And one of those is our Help and Hope podcast. You know, Jesus promised that in this world we will have troubles, but don't be afraid, because as he also promises, he has overcome the world. We are so grateful that we can offer to you stories, redemption stories from the Help and Hope podcast that are designed to address some of those troubles that we might experience. These life crises are often difficult to discuss, but friends, they need to be faced as we help one another walk by faith. The Help and Hope podcast includes real-life testimonies of people who have walked through experiences that are hard, and they have found their strength in Christ. We tackle such life crises as terminal illness, loss of a child, widowhood, depression, addiction, adoption, and so much more. Our guests include well-known people like Nancy Guthrie, Daryl Strawberry, Ben Fuller, Rosaria Butterfield, Laura Story, Vanitha Reisner, and so many more. But we also offer many stories from people like your neighbor, your friend, your coworkers, people like you, people who quietly persevere, often alone in their struggles, except for the presence of their Lord. Some of our conversations are with counselors and those who offer practical steps for walking by faith when life is hard. I know that these conversations are going to shore up your foundation for those uninvited moments when your faith is challenged. You're going to be encouraged, and we invite you to share these stories with others to help them walk by faith wherever God has placed them. So friends, go to markinc.org, that's markinc.org, click the Help and Hope link, and browse these stories and look for those stories that apply specifically to you. But also check out the ones that don't, because I know that there's someone in your life who's going to need the help and hope that you hear in these conversations. I'm Sharon Betters, and I am so grateful that you have joined us today, and we look forward to being with you tomorrow.